Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Marketing Masterclass webinar. This one is all about the topic around how to make your marketing budget go further. So if you've joined any of our other Marketing Masterclass webinars, you'll know that we cover a range of themes around marketing topics for construction manufacturers. Today is all about budget and how you can make the most of what you've got and get the most return on your investment for what you're doing. So as usual, we've got an esteemed panel of marketing guests who I'll introduce in a moment. And we're looking forward to having some really productive conversations today about all things marketing budgets within the construction manufacturing space. So, and thanks again to everyone for joining us. We'll be running for up to an hour today. Attendees' mics are muted, but please do ask questions via the Q&A, and we'll aim to get back to you afterwards. And we hope that you enjoy what we've got lined up to say. So I'll quickly introduce the panel. First of all, we've got Chris Ashworth from CADvantage. Chris, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Robin. Welcome to everybody. So I've been working in the construction sector in sales and marketing roles for rather longer than I care to remember, to be quite honest. We're now getting up to 40 years. The first half of that was working with building product manufacturers, and the second half was the founding of Competitive Advantage, who conduct market research into quite a lot of it around specifier decision making, provide training, and also other consultancy. Thank you.
Brilliant. And next up is a regular NBS webinar attendee, Andy Lambert, formerly Content Cal, now at Adobe. Andy, just want to say a quick few words?
Hey Robin, thank you, and hello everyone, thanks for joining. So as Robin said, I'm on the founding team of a company called Content Cal, content marketing platform. A few of you might use it. We built that company 6 years ago, grew it through content marketing channels, which we'll talk to a little bit later on, and sold it to Adobe in December 21. So we'll be talking about all things brand marketing today. So thanks Robin, thanks for including me.
Brilliant, thanks Andy. And last but by no means least is Catherine Spivey from Smart Marketing Works. Hi Catherine.
Hi, thanks Robin, and welcome everybody. So Smart Marketing, we're a full service marketing agency based in the Midlands, and we specialise in building service products. I'm agency account director here, and I've only recently joined the agency, having worked in manufacturing for the last 20 odd years. So looking forward to a good session today.
Brilliant, thank you guys, and as I said, thanks again for joining us and sharing your wisdoms and insights on what is no doubt a hot topic for everyone right now. So we've got a few topics and discussions to dive into as we go. Before I do that, I probably just wanted to frame a bit about why we're having the conversation that we are today around budget. Anyone who follows NBS might have seen our construction manufacturers marketing report that we launched earlier this year. And within that, we asked manufacturers what their top 4 barriers were to achieving their marketing goals and objectives. And several of those relate to budget. Number 1 being the biggest barrier being limited in-house marketing resource, and number 3 being specifically available budget. And you can see number 2 and 4 respectively being demonstrating ROI and reaching the right target audience. And arguably, all of those are improved by and linked to effective use of the marketing budget. And obviously, in using that budget wisely and effectively, you're going to impact upon all of those different areas. So that's really the big kind of topic for the day. Please do have a look at the report if you haven't already. It's available to download freely on the NBS website. And of course, budget, always a hot topic, but particularly at the moment, given that everyone's quite trying to understand the impact of rising inflation, ongoing supply and materials shortages, and various other issues. It's never been more important to put that marketing budget to good use, whether you're looking to target specifiers, contractors, or anyone else within the industry. So it seemed like a really good time to have this conversation. So we're going to dive right in to a few kind of points of discussion. And so the first one we've got is around prioritizing the right activity. So first and foremost, if you want to use your budget effectively, the most important thing to do potentially is to look at what you're using it for, and to make sure that you're prioritizing the right things over the wrong things. So put it out to the panel to maybe start discussions on this one. Chris, in terms of prioritizing the right activity, what advice and what tips would you offer up to construction manufacturers?
Well, Robin, as you already have said, I think the really important point is to be applying metrics and measuring everything so you know what kind of return you're getting on investment. Clearly, the financial parts of your business are going to be asking these questions. The Construction Marketing Awards, who act as a showcase for best marketing practice in the construction sector, put a lot of weight in evaluating the metrics that are used and the return on investment. So that return on investment, certainly with online activities, there are a lot of tools that provide very useful information, but it needs to be extended beyond that. So, for example, if you're running CPDs, how many of those CPDs lead through to products being specified and subsequently being purchased? All these things need to be measured. There's these days, I think there's no excuse for missing anything out with CRM systems and various other reporting systems available.
Brilliant, yeah. And Catherine, with so many different things for marketers to spend their budgets on, is there a one-size-fits-all approach, or how would you go about advising your clients to pick and choose the right things to focus on?
Yeah, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all, unfortunately. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I think on that one. I think obviously it's vitally important to understand the client's requirements from our point of view. Also, Chris has just touched on the importance of metrics, which obviously is vitally important, and it's a really good measure for everything. But I think it's also really important that we remember the initial marketing objectives. So go back to basics there. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? And make the decision based on a number of things, not just on the metrics. We know that we can't measure everything, and it's still important that we get the right marketing mix to hit the market. So again, going back to the strategy, what are our short-term goals? What are our long-term goals? And what are our medium goals? And how are we going to meet that? So I think it's also important to remember the power of other activities that probably aren't measurable. So for a good example is today, we've got the panel, we're sort of investing our time to share our thoughts and experiences here. It's not necessarily measurable, but people can benefit from it. And then who knows, further down the line, people might remember Chris or Andy or myself and then come back to us at a later date for some more information. So I think it's important that we take the metrics involved, but also go back to the basics, remembering what we're trying to achieve, and then also looking at other areas too.
Brilliant, yeah. Andy, I recall you, I think, talking about the intersection of business strategy and marketing strategy before. That's essential to this, isn't it? Before you can do anything else.
Yeah, I think it's been articulated perfectly already by Catherine, which is, not fixating on every bit of data available to us, because there is so much. It's about focusing on the metrics that matter, the true metrics that support your underlying goals and ambitions. And that's really where the magic happens. And I just want to pick up on Chris's point as well about the importance of CRM, because that's so essential as a cornerstone for the growth of your business, truly understanding as best you can, because you can't measure everything. Catherine's already said this, that we have to get comfortable with this. We can't always attribute everything, but CRM is a fantastic place to start. Whatever product you use, we use HubSpot here, and it's been like the essential component of our growth over the years, for allowing us to track the activity that drove the highest value return in the shortest time possible, being able to map the user journey, so the flow and the pieces of content and where people discover us for the first time to complete the sale. And that's allowed us to make sure that we've weighted our marketing investments correctly. That's what I'll add to that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, a few things there. So strategy, obviously, and then being able to link that data up across channels, absolutely essential. And it's surprising how many manufacturers and suppliers I've spoken to in the past who actually struggle to link that data across touch points, because they don't necessarily have CRM tools or the right things available. So really important to get that in place if you haven't already, because it just provides so much rich information about who you're reaching and how, and what the best touch points are to reach them on.
Yeah, just to add to that, actually, Robin, because I was having a conversation just a few moments ago about attribution. Anyway, it's one of my favorite nerdy topics to talk about, and it's sometimes just a really simple thing, because we know that we can't always track and attribute things perfectly, or very well very well at all in some cases. Just simply having that means of information flow back from a sales team or somewhere else where you can understand from the end purchaser, where did you hear about us? We just need to ask this question as many times as we possibly can to truly understand how people bought us, what was the defining thing that they saw that made us buy us, and just try and capture that data wherever we can, because we know automatically, that our attribution software or whatever CRM we're using won't always track that. So as long as we've got just a simple manual mechanism in place to capture that data and feed that back into our CRM, that truly helps. Because as a perfect case in point here is that our data, if you looked at what we see in HubSpot, it would say most of our sales come through Google PPC, so pay-per-click. But actually, when you dig into the data, you realize that most of our sales come through webinars that we run. So it's very interesting when you actually ask people, how did you discover us, and what was the thing that made you compelled to buy our product?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So is that in terms of they might be discovering you on a webinar, but then one of their last points of touch was a pay-per-click link, and actually it shows you that the value of different activities and different channels joined together have a big effect across the kind of the life cycle.
Definitely, yeah, because you could debate first touch versus last touch attribution forever, right? So what's more important, the initial discovery or the bit that makes someone buy? So, but truly understanding at a human level, what was it that they did or they saw that made them go, you know what, I wanted to go with this provider. That's the moment of magic that we want to capture and invest more in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we touched on it earlier, and I think we'll probably come back to it, but for specifiers and manufacturers, CPD is probably a really good example of that, I think, Chris, isn't it? Because you may not get an instant result and immediately make a sale off delivering a CPD to a specifier, but the opportunity to get on their radar and get in front of them is massive. I think we've seen NBS data before that's shown us something like 60% of specifiers will go on to specify a product from a supplier that they've seen a CPD of, and it gives you that reach in and that time to build brand awareness, even if the sale may come later on.
Absolutely, and I can't speak enough about how valuable CPD is at that early stage. Not only is it introducing your products and the concepts you're putting about, it can reinforce the position of the product specification, explain why certain clauses are there, and also works to build the perception of the individual that delivers the seminar and also the organization they work for as a trusted advisor, an organization with expertise that can talk with knowledge and that the decision maker can be confident to go to when they need help and advice later on.
Definitely. Yeah, and just final one on this point for you, Catherine. Prioritizing is as much about deciding what not to do as what to do, isn't it? How can you decide if there's any activities that just aren't worthwhile for you, or things that you can just cut out of your budget?
I think that's one thing that agencies such as ourselves can really assist with, in that the Smart Marketing Works where I am, and we specialise in the building product sector. So we're quite unique in our focus and our understanding of the market. So from us, our clients can benefit from our experience. So although we would never share confidential data, we've got a lot of experience with campaigns and marketing and strategy, which have really assisted our clients. And then also on the other side, perhaps things that haven't been so successful. So again, one of the many benefits associated with outsourcing.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's a nice segue in. Actually, Chris, there was some data that you were going to touch on first, wasn't there, before we move on to talking about outsourcing? But I think this probably makes some of the points that we were talking about, wasn't it, in terms of what sources of information specifiers are turning to in order to find products.
Yes, indeed, Robin. And the point here as well, I think, is it's not just about the internal data that your own organization generates, it's about other data that's out there. And there's quite a lot of information available in the public domain, or as in the case with this, it's actually a report or a set of reports that Competitive Advantage publishes every 2 years, which is looking at communications channels and engagement. And as you say, this is a response for the Construction Media Index Consolidated. So it's covering architects, engineers, main contractors, house builders in terms of where they go for product information and ideas. You can see the spread. And online search engines are pretty much up there, but I think very often that's driven by the person knowing who they want to find out more about, perhaps from a CPD or something else. And you can see how important the manufacturer generated information is, but also just the general range of things, from product directories through to online forum, to CPD presentations, participation in conferences. And it's looking at that and thinking, so what's going to be most effective for our target customer groups?
Yeah, exactly. So as we said, there isn't a one-size-fits-all model, but probably worth all product manufacturers reviewing this and understanding what they're doing about each, because online search engines might be a good start point, but they're not actually going to provide the information. That information that they serve up will come from a website, whether it be the manufacturer's own website or something else. So it just shows the need to understand if that's the place your audience are going, are you prioritizing that within your budget and your activity to make sure that you're as visible as possible in that space.
And if I could just add to that as well, very often it's about good content that's being put out as blogs or other kind of white papers, other information of that nature, which of course is what gets picked up by the search engine and then feeds that person through to hopefully your website and maybe an inquiry with yourselves or one of your provider partners.
Definitely, yeah. I would add to that, even having the right content and the right message kind of transcends all channels and activities, really, doesn't it? And it's essential to make sure that is in place, because that will save you more budget than anything else, probably, on wasted activities, is making sure you got the right message for the right audience, and then you can work out how to push that out. And absolutely essential to make sure that is correct and accurate.
Just to pick up on this, actually, if you don't mind me just jumping in, because this is really interesting. It's the first time I'm seeing this data, so thanks for sharing this, Chris. I'm picking up the online search engine and the point that you made around making sure that your content's good and discovery through search, super important, obviously. But something I would call out for those listening is that don't always think about it as the stuff that will appear on your site as blogs, which is obviously an important thing, right? Making sure you have the best quality content on your site that's optimized around the keywords you want to rank for. So you want to appear top of Google for. That is a long-term game. It doesn't happen overnight to rank top of Google. We'll talk later. I've got some tools that will help you find where those gaps are to help you rank for those more defined search terms. We call them long tail keywords, which are more specific to you. But the point I want to mention, which was the thing that really drove growth for our business, and we're in a different industry, absolutely, but I think this is ubiquitous across industries, is that whenever you Google whatever search term you want to rank for, look at those others that are ranking and find ways you can collaborate with those sources, or whoever's written that blog, whether it's a review of something or whatever it is. We spent a lot of time invested in working with those other sites that ranked high for the keywords that we wanted to rank for, and found ways to collaborate with those individuals, whether it's the inclusion of some of our narrative in their blog and they updated their blog accordingly, or other things like that. Collaboration really helps you get your brand name known on those other sites that are already ranking high. So I think about this as a kind of dual phase strategy, your own site and what we would call off-site SEO. So working with others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And again, comes back to having that content message and those clear themes that are going to cut through and create credibility and engagement with your brand.
Definitely.
Brilliant. I'm sure we're going to come back to some of these points, but that moves us on quite nicely to one of the best things you can do probably to make that budget go further and to get the most use out of it is to outsource effectively. So, and particularly for those those manufacturers that might have limited in-house resource, which we know a lot do, might not necessarily have the skills in-house to deliver everything they want to from a marketing point of view, or might just be stretched in terms of the volume of output and activity that they can use. Outsourcing effectively to agencies and partners and so on can make a huge difference there, but it can also, if you know, it can also distract, and potentially, if you don't work with the right partner and don't work effectively, it can be a misuse of time and energy if not done appropriately. So, Chris, I wonder what your top tips would be to manufacturers and how best they should outsource effectively and choose the right partners.
I think it's starting by finding companies that both they feel comfortable working with, but also who understand their business, their niche. And we see it with market research. Quite a lot of businesses will go to large market research organizations who cover everything from consumption of coffee through to maybe a bit of construction. And I would say that smaller specialist organizations, whether it be researchers in our case, or communications agencies, any of these things, you're better off going to specialists who understand your industry. And if you do that, what you're getting, you're buying, for if want of a better word, is people with experience, people like myself who've been, well, actually all of us talking on this panel today, I shouldn't just include myself, who've been doing it for a long time, have a lot of experience, have had access to other information. And I think it was Catherine touched on the fact that, okay, you can't tell your one company what you've done for another company, but you can't help but have a better understanding of things as a result of working on previous projects. So sometimes it's expensive, yes, but what you're getting in terms of value for money is very, very worthwhile in terms of that knowledge that you tap into with people who can be effective very, very quickly as well. And I think that's important to bear in mind. Whereas if you hire someone, if you can find the right person in the first place, there's an investment of a year or two to get them up to speed.
Definitely, yeah. Catherine, would you? How would you go about making sure or advising people on how to select the right partners?
Yeah, well, I think Chris just touched on it beautifully. Then it's finding the right partnership to me is key. Whether that be a specialist in the sector. So, for example, we specialise in the building product sector, so that's perfect for our clients. I think also that buying into the agency on the one that's got a big skill set. So, for example, an agency as ourselves, we do the full service. So we have experts across the team in a number of different areas. So we don't just specialise in sort of digital marketing or market research or CPDs. We do the whole thing. So from agencies like ourselves, if you buy time with us, then you can have a variety of different skill sets. So although it may seem costly, you actually benefit from a number of different people with different experiences. So you're buying into that. So the offering is good. I think also you can sort of dip in and out. If you've got busy campaigns coming up, then the agency can help you on things like that. It's not just, you don't have to invest in a full-time employee. And also benefit very much from the advice and experience of the team. An agency such as ourselves has, we've got decades of experience in the sector, so you're also buying into that skill sector there. Yeah,
absolutely, and they're things that you can't just bring in-house
on
a whim.
No, and I think also it's important that agencies can work with existing marketing teams as a complementary function, or even just outsource, because we have clients outsource their marketing completely, or then we work very closely with them. So there's more different skills and different things that you can benefit from working with agencies.
Yeah, and so on that point, then, is there a right balance of what should be insourced versus outsourced, or does it depend on the very much on the business in question?
I think it depends on the business in question. I think something like a CPD, agencies such as ourselves, we can take the whole CPD. So we can have a meeting with the client, and they can give us a broad remit of what they're looking for. We can do the research, we can do the analysis, we can get the relevant standards, we can generate the proposal, the presentation. then we can digitize it. We can work with REBA to get the accreditation, so we can do the whole thing, and then we can launch it. We can also do the marketing support materials to go with it. So I think something like that can completely be outsourced. And then there may be something completely different, which could be on the PR side, when obviously that could be a more combined approach, working with the team in the client.
If I can just build on that again with your point on CPD, Catherine, and that's actually a really good example of where outsourcing it, while it might cost more, it may be actually cheaper, because organizations that understand what's required by REBA, for example, for a CPD seminar, know when they're writing it what they should and shouldn't say. Whereas if it's done in-house by somebody who doesn't have that experience, then the chances are that they'll put in things that aren't acceptable. Then when the process goes to REBA, it'll get returned and it'll be necessary to rewrite it, which could go back 2 or 3 times. Whereas, I'm not saying we can necessarily get it right first time, but at least one would hope second time. So there are things there where, yes, outsourcing it per hour may cost more than using an internal resource, but we'll do it in a much shorter time frame.
And streamline it as well, because we all suffer with being time poor these days, so sometimes it is quite nice to be able to hand it over.
Yeah, it could almost be a false economy to try and do something in-house that ultimately might be best served out of house and actually save you a lot in the long run in terms of time, effort, and energy and so on.
Yes, and of course, we mustn't forget the opportunity cost. If the person in-house is, say, writing a CPD seminar, then what are they not doing instead of that?
Yeah. What are the things that you can't... Oh, sorry, Andy, go on.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it goes back to that prioritizing the right activity. Because what I'd always recommend any business doing, whether outsourcing or whether they're choosing whatever activity to go after, is just do a simple 4-box quadrant, right? So where you've got your high value and low effort activities in the top right quadrant. So these are the ones you must do. These are the essential ones, and start deprioritizing the ones that are lower value and higher effort as well. So thinking about some of those activities in that 4-box grid helps you categorize the things that you think, right, we need our own internal staff, if you have internal marketers to work on, versus outsourcing. So you get a clear scope. And I think that clear scope is an important thing about outsourcing. Speaking as someone, initially we were an agency first and foremost, and then created a software company, and then used outward agencies. I think having a clarity of scope for what you would like that external partner to help you with, but more importantly than that is to have an appreciation, ideally at the executive level within a business, as to the impact of marketing, why we're doing this, the overarching strategy, and to recognize that this isn't all about short-term performance. This is about long-term growth as well. I've seen far too many agency relationships break where there's been a misalignment between those perspectives of short versus long term, where agencies have been targeted on getting short-term leads in, or whatever it is, driving sales ultimately. And that's quite a challenging thing to do initially in an engagement. So appreciating the broader impact of marketing helps increase the scope, and also creates a deeper working relationship when you're outsourcing too. So it goes back to those strategic goals again that Catherine mentioned.
Yeah, Dan, I think there's a really important point there about how it's worth investing that time and effort in building lasting relationships and partnerships.
Absolutely.
Because then your value for money increases exponentially almost, as you get to work with partners that know your business better and better all the time, and can add that value almost without even thinking about it. And quickly, what are the things in the panel's view that are hard to outsource or that can't be outsourced? And I don't mean in terms of maybe specific activities, but more in kind of the product knowledge and the skills and the things that where you really want to keep control of them in-house. Are there any particular areas that you would suggest are kept internally?
If I start with the term engagement, I talked earlier on about the trusted advisor concept, where a person is being seen as an expert, and you certainly don't want to delegate that contact to a third party, because it's really, really important to build those relationships, both in terms of building that perception, but also the personal relationships which go with it. So again, I've seen some companies who either aspire to, and we try to talk them out of it, to actually sort of subcontract the delivery of a CPD seminar. Terrible mistake, in my opinion. There are things like that where the relationship has such massive value, you don't want to do it. That would be my starting point.
Great, yeah, so loads on that one, but undoubtedly getting outsourcing right is probably one of the single biggest things that you can do to make your budget go further and get the most out of it as possible. Brilliant. I'm going to move us on to the next topic, which was around upskilling on a budget. So again, this is one of the things that came back in our survey that was a real barrier to achieving marketing objectives, which was around not necessarily having the right skills available in-house to be able to achieve those things. One of the big themes around that was types of digital marketing skills and so on. So really important that, again, you know, manufacturers are investing in training and development and so on, and having those skills in-house as well as using them out of house, but that can be difficult to do when budgets are limited. So Andy, I wonder if I could start with you on this one. Actually, you know, what are the approaches and the techniques that organizations can use to keep upskilling their teams and making sure that they've got the right knowledge in the marketing space?
Yeah, absolutely. From a marketing space perspective, there are so many wonderful resources out there to help people keep up to date with digital skills. Google Digital Garage would be the first thing I'll call out, which is entirely free, which is an essential component really of understanding the SEO stuff that we were talking about, both on-site and off-site, as well as if you're thinking about investing in Google Display or Google PPC, all of those components, and YouTube advertising, obviously, all of those components packaged into some really accessible learning from Google Digital Garage. So I recommend anyone checking that one out. There's also some great stuff if you're planning on doing social ads. The number one place really for social ads right now is on Facebook, certainly for this category. Facebook and Instagram is where we typically see construction businesses that use our products do the best. So Facebook Blueprint is a really good course for those that are new into this, to help them understand how to build and optimize campaigns, both of which entirely free, super useful, but of course, yeah, very biased around their own product set, clearly. So that's something that we're also pretty cognizant of here at Adobe. So we're building a lot of educational stuff very broadly around digital marketing. So more on that to come. But also just to call out two other brilliant resources as well for you to note down is Hubspot Academy, which isn't related just to HubSpot users. It's really broad ranging around like email marketing techniques, from as tactical stuff as like to, you know, the 7 best performing headlines in 2022, for example. So really practical stuff for smaller or less experienced organizations. That's its kind of tilt. And then LinkedIn Learning as well. That's the only one that does have a small fee attached to it, but LinkedIn's learning programs delivered by some very well respected course practitioners. So I always call that one out. So yeah, for me, I think nowadays there really isn't any budgetary excuse for not investing in your own development or your employees' development. Of course, there's still the time commitment. Absolutely, you need an employee base that's motivated, inspired to increase their own knowledge, or maybe it's just a case of you calling out like a couple of hours per week for development of your staff, of which won't cost anything, but just that focused time to help them identify an area of marketing expertise where they would like to become stronger in. And all of those resources, certainly the most impactful in terms of, you know, digital marketing techniques, would be covered by Google Digital Garage and Facebook Blueprint. So that would be my 2 penneth on that.
Brilliant! Wow, loads of top tips there, and we'll send links out to all of those things, by the way, that Andy mentioned there, just to make sure that you can access them. We always get people saying, "Oh, what was that link you mentioned?" So thank you for that, Andy. Lots of resources, and yeah, so much good free content out there available. And actually, sometimes the hardest thing is knowing knowing what free content to choose. So I think you've just helped give some really good tips there. Catherine, anything you wanted to add on that around kind of upskilling of teams?
No, I think Andy did a beautiful job then. I think just reinforcing that, that businesses need to give people the time to train, and it should be seen as part of the role rather than something you perhaps have to do in your own time. It's vitally important to do that. On the flip side of that, another benefit of using an agency is that you'll be buying the skills already. So obviously they're not your staff, but you don't have to invest in your own staff as much if you're using an agency. So the agencies will have the skills and the experience already. So not detracting at all from your own staff having the time and the experience to do the training, but also agencies can be of benefit in those situations.
Yeah, and if you get it right as well, you know, I've seen a lot of cases where internal teams have learned a lot from partners they've worked with, or whether it's agencies or software advisors or whoever it might be. That, you know, that some of that know-how always helps upskill the
absolutely, yeah, and we'll happily work with clients, showing them how to do things. You know, if that's something they need to do going forward. Yeah.
Chris, anything from you on the upskilling side of things before we quickly move on?
I would just add not to forget the other members of your team. And over the last 2 years, 2.5 years with the pandemic, there's been this situation of everybody home working, where certainly a lot of people working from home, and we're now seeing the move towards hybrid working where people are working part at home, part together. So I think that informal sharing of knowledge and skills that used to happen between members of the team now needs to be formalized a bit. So actually making a point of bringing everybody together, physically together, to share information. And it might be, for example, a case that you ask each member of the team to research something and then present it to the others. So picking up on what Andy was saying with the various free options there, maybe somebody does LinkedIn Learning and then reports it back to the rest of the team, which has the advantage of not everybody having to go through the whole process. But I also think for the person that has to report it back, it's more of a learning process if they actually then have to remember what they learned and share it with other people. And of course, that isn't just about metrics, it's about such things as competitors, you know, asking people to report on research and then report on the different competitors. So bring together your existing team and share the skills and expertise they have got between them, because I'm sure there's some strong complementary skills where you can get that crossover.
That's a really good point, actually, Chris. Especially about like talking about competitors and doing that kind of that deliberate, a bit of a fun exercise where diving into your competitors. We did a similar thing recently and I found it super valuable. So it's a great call out. And I think just picking up the point around hybrid working, remote working, etc. I think learning really just needs to be more, it's an organization's role to create a deliberate facilitation of learning. So whether that's everyone comes together on a Wednesday to share their learnings, or everyone carves out an hour on a Friday to do their own professional development, whatever it is, organizations have a responsibility to make it okay for people to learn. It's sometimes seen like learning isn't working, but it absolutely is one and the same, especially in marketing, because things move so darn quickly. It's the only industry you can go to bed an expert and wake up a novice. Honestly, the way that things move. So I think it's essential for any marketer. And, you know, I'm fairly sure that Catherine and the agency will have the same application of continual development and knowledge.
Absolutely.
Agency, right? So, you know, and I don't think it's a case of, you know, do you upskill internally or do you use an agency? It's a case of you should use both, because it's going to be complementary. And of course, because we're in a huge war for marketing talent at the moment, in some kind of weird dynamic that's happening in our economy, where our economy doesn't look in a great shape, but the job market is incredibly hard. Hiring good marketers, and probably Catherine will know this very well,
is
very hard to hire good marketers. So keeping the ones you got by making them feel loved is a very important step.
Very well said.
Yeah, all of that. So lots to think about there, but what an important area. We could probably do a whole webinar just on this one alone, but I'm going to move us on. We've got a couple more areas that we want to cover before the end. And the next one is around campaign effectiveness. So Again, we talked earlier about objectives and linking to business strategy and so on. One of the most important things to do is to make sure that your campaigns are effective and are achieving the right objectives. So I wonder who wants to start us off with this one in terms of improving campaign effectiveness. Andy, I think, have we got some charts coming up? I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm just conscious that I've been speaking quite a lot, so I didn't want to chime in straight away. But I wanted to call this out because it's sometimes an often unknown thing in the world of marketing. I follow this marketing philosopher very heavily. You'll find him on Marketing Week. But anyway, 95% of B2B buyers are not in the market for your products. And I think it's a really important thing to think about is that we often wait, and I've spoken a lot about like short versus long-term stuff. We often waste so much of our energy and efforts on the 5% of the market that is in the market looking to buy our products right now. And that's an important part to think about, but there's a much broader market out there that we need to educate and inspire. So I think I always like to call this one out because it helps us think about the importance of brand marketing. Sometimes we think about like brand marketing as like, oh, the marketing that's, you know, as Catherine mentioned earlier, that stuff that's hard to measure, but it's so essential. And in increasing what is one of the most important components of marketing that far too few marketers think about, in my view, is about share of voice, the amount of the conversation that we're part of. Such an important metric to think about. I'll talk about more in a second. Do you mind going to the next slide, Robin?
Yeah.
Cool. So if we think about short versus long term, because they complement each other, it's not either or, but often times I think marketers spend too long fixating on like, right, we need to hit revenue goals right now, and we compromise our long-term ambitions. We've spoken about like content and SEO, which is on the right-hand side, which is, you know, it's going to take time to yield that traffic like we've spoken about. But as we already said, websites is the number one place that construction product buyers go to when they want to find out more about the product. They're going to turn to Google, and we better hope that our website is ranking. It takes a long time to get there, but it's super high yield when we do get there. And then we've got paid activations on the left-hand side, right? Short-term stuff, but we shouldn't think that short-term stuff is going to drive us long-term, because we need to invest in our broader share of voice. So ultimately, how much of that conversation in the market that we're part of, that's the thing that will drive campaign effectiveness over time, because our number one job as marketers is to do this kind of marketing fluffy term that we call maximizing mental availability, basically being the first company that comes to mind when we think about something. If you just go to the next slide, and I'll stop my waffle in a second. And that kind of leads into this very timely thing that we're approaching right now. And you know, the economy is cyclical. We all know this, and we all know the way that it's headed right now. And, you know, if we looked at the kind of brief recession that we saw mid-pandemic, or we look back into 2008, essentially we see the same things. We see the same things where we see the brands that continue to invest heavily in share of voice are the ones that increase their market share. Ultimately, it presents recession and tough economic climates present those that are brave, those that really understand marketing with a unique opportunity. And we've seen this again and again of like those brands that have invested heavily in times when most people are pulling back from marketing, invest heavily, and naturally post-pandemic, when the economy recovers, which it inevitably will, as it does in every single cycle, that those are the ones that have the highest mental availability, the highest share of voice, and as a result increase their market share. So I think it's always really interesting to think about this, think about the long-term effects, the brand effects of marketing, and impact that your share of voice have, because it's that brand awareness, that feeling of trust, that is the thing that makes all campaigns work so much more effectively. Like I said, that the killer word that we're trying to generate here is trust, in the same way of like the CPD credits that we've been speaking about. You know, the more people that we can educate and inform, the more trust we build. As a result, we drive, you know, an unfair preference towards our products. Here endeth my soapbox rant.
If I can climb on the soapbox after you, Andy, I think good points there.
Go on, Chris.
But just building on your point there, again, not just the construction industry, but the UK industry tends to be very focused on short-term goals. Yet I'm sure many of the people listening to this webinar will be working in an environment where they have to do specification selling, engaging with architects or engineers at the start to get the product specified. And typically we're talking, if you're lucky, 12 months, probably 18, 24 months, maybe even longer between that engagement with an architect who says, yes, I'm going to specify it, and the order being delivered on site. And so there is the real danger there to cut back on investment in that early stage of engagement, which is, after all, demand creation, to save money. And I've seen it in numerous occasions where people have got rid of their specification sales forces or downsized them dramatically, and said, oh, well, we've saved money. It's not made any difference, because for 6-12 months afterwards, it won't. That's all the stuff that's in the pipeline. So I'd really just want to herald the importance of keeping that medium to long-term focus on the engagement with the specifier, which will take time to turn into results. And I was talking to a company earlier today who was saying, well, during the pandemic, it's been much, much harder for our sales team to engage with architects to get hold of them. So they've been focusing much more at the contractor stage, switching specs, trying to win them there. And while actually focusing on the contractor is no bad thing in itself, it is if it's at the expense of the longer term business engaging with specifiers. So I really want to say the importance of that element. That would be my soapbox message.
Yeah, fully support that, Chris. And you know, in terms of bang for buck, obviously I would say this, but you know, if for those manufacturers that are in NBS Source, you know, they're getting in there at the point where the actual decision is made around choosing the product that is going to go in the spec at that moment. So to Andy's point about people not usually being in the mode to buy or select, that's absolutely true across most channels, but there is the odd one where it's kind of there in the moment. But as we've said before, you know, you need to be doing a combination of activities. So it's not just about being there at the point of spec, it's about doing CPD and SEO and everything else as well. That's all gonna ultimately lead up to that moment. Catherine, I'm interested if a supplier is cutting budget, a customer's cutting budget left, right, and centre. How do you convince them that they should still be investing in marketing?
In marketing, well, I think it goes back again to the short, medium, and long-term objectives, and how we can work with our clients to ensure that those are still met. We've gone through some of the benefits of working with an agency, so I mean, hopefully we can demonstrate to each client how we can actually improve their marketing, how they can benefit from our experience. As agencies such as ourselves, with the whole of the team are based on sort of industry specialists, so really buying into that sort of skill set. So yeah, although it's a difficult challenge to do, hopefully sort of our reputation and our client base and the work that we do, we can demonstrate the importance of continuing with it. I think it was quite interesting during the pandemic how the switch in marketing activity happened. So whereas we've done a lot of packaging and print beforehand, during the pandemic, CPDs, the importance of CPDs really came about. So we were able to sort of switch around our resource within the team to concentrate on CPDs, and whether that have been digitizing an existing one, generating a new one, or even refreshing one, to just check that all the industry standards. So it was quite interesting to see from an agency perspective how people sort of work with that. So lots of different areas really, but and hopefully sort of the relationship we have with our clients allows us to demonstrate the benefits of working with us is. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Right, well, on to our, oh, actually, hang on, before we do that, it's time for Andy to drop in a few top tips on tools as well.
Oh yeah,
to support campaign effectiveness before we move on to the final topic.
Yeah, good point. I'll do this real quick. So we're talking about share of voice. If you want to make this metric not something that sounds so esoteric, this tool is like £10 a month, I think. It helps you calculate your share of voice, the amount of the conversation you're part of relative to your competitors. It's not something you need to look at and assess over on a week-by-week basis. I would look at it every month, or every quarter, really, I would say, see how you compare to your competitors, because naturally any shifts in your share of voice mean meaningful shifts in your market share. So I'd recommend that one to bring that to life. Move on to the next slide, please. This is brilliant for word of mouth growth, because as we know, more and more We trust recommendations from others over what a brand says about themselves, of course. So this is a great way to find those with influence in the social space that meet your category, that talk about whatever's relevant to your business, and you can find and discover and start collaborations with those individuals. I could talk forever about that as a concept, but let's move on. But I think it's really important for driving word of mouth growth, which in turn drives your share of voice. On to the next slide for me, please. And this goes back to making sure you've got the right message, as you were talking to, Robin. YouTube have just released this, which is super valuable, and it was in your chart as well, Chris, about it was an increasing frequency of those that go to YouTube to discover products and services and find more information. If you go into your YouTube channel, look in analytics and research, type in whatever keywords, it will show you any trends related to those keywords. And the new feature is that it will show you where those gaps are, where there's good search demand, but there is not an abundance of content being supplied to meet that demand. It's actually flagged as a content gap. So that's really useful to look at, because we know how important YouTube is in helping people get that research and getting our brand top of mind on search there.
Brilliant, yeah.
They are now my 3 tools.
Excellent, thank you. More diamond tidbits there, especially that little bit around finding gaps in knowledge content, because YouTube is such a powerful search engine in terms of meeting people's needs. So if there's a gap that you can fill in there with a question that your audience is asking, go ahead and do it, and you will definitely get traffic from that, and it will be good quality interactions. Good. All right. Our final point of discussion then, when we're coming back to making your budget work harder. How would you go about targeting specifiers to generate leads, and but doing that in a cost-effective way, making best use of your budget? Chris, I don't know if you want to start us off on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Well, first off, I think it's about prioritizing. We've talked about prioritization all the way through the webinar, but prioritizing who you target in the first place. And again, Andy referred to using a 4-box grid to make selections earlier on. And that applies just as much in terms of selecting the people to engage with. So use data that's available, such as Glenigan, to give you project data on who the key architects are that are specifying for large projects. Similarly, the contractors that are working on those projects. So you can then see who it is that, with your CRM system, who it is that you're currently engaging with, and those who you're missing. So you can look at bringing some over from the left-hand side to the right of your matrix to build the relationships there. That would be my first statement. My next one would be, it's all about the specification. Once you've engaged with those early specifiers, you need well-written specifications which incorporate clauses which ideally are unique to your product, but even if they're not unique, narrow down the choice a bit. So later on, when equal or approved is being used by a contractor to switch out specs, it's not so easy. There's a clear understanding of the architect's intention. So that's very important. And then you've got to justify those specification terms. And that's where CPD comes in terms of seminars which go into the detail. So I think my summary there would be, select the right people to target, have well-written specifications which are readily available. I'm sure Robin can suggest ways to make that happen, and then deliver CPD and also blog articles and other good content to explain why those elements of your specification are important to delivering for the architect what they want in terms of the final output. Yeah,
brilliant. And I think Chris, you had some data to share with us on some of this as well, didn't you?
Yes, and again, this is post-pandemic, how we're having to change our minds on things. So pre-pandemic, a very high proportion of CPD seminars were delivered face-to-face. Obviously, the pandemic stopped that happening, and we're now seeing a change in attitudes as a result of people changing their behaviors. And this again comes from the Construction Media Index. So we asked this question it was the back end of last year, early part of this year. And in this instance, I pulled it out for architects. And we were asking what was their preferred method of CPD. And you'll see there's no one overpowering solution. So you need to have a mix between recorded, which is just available for people to click on and listen, live presentations online like this, where you can engage with people, and face-to-face events, whether they be in offices in the traditional way of doing it or at organized events. And I think my point here as well would be that while the message you're delivering is probably the same for that CPD, the way you do it, the way you interact with your audience is going to be different depending on whether it's face-to-face and you can pass some examples of your products around, or it's an online situation. So it's not good enough, I think, just to say, okay, well, now let's make a recording of the CPD we've been delivering face-to-face. You need to think about making it more engaging.
Yeah, brilliant. So people expecting that balance and that mix. Catherine, on the point of kind of reaching specifiers and generating leads, anything you want to add around that in terms of effective budget?
Yeah, again, completely agree with Chris. I think on CPDs, which are perfect for this, I think, and also thinking of making them engaging, I think you can include things like factory tours, which are really interesting. They don't just have to be a presentation. Yeah. And like, again, post-pandemic, I think the world is opening up a little more, but not everyone's able to get to the facilities. So, you know, a factory tour is really useful, really interesting. So that's a good thing. You've got the podcast, technical literature, so it's not just the presentation. I think also it's vitally important to always be up to date with what the hot topics are in the industry, so we can get more engagement and also drip feed awareness through. Keeping in front of mind is obviously really important. Chris touched on how long the specification process is. So sort of drip feeding things through, whether that be via social media, CPDs, advertising, blogs, all that type of thing, just to sort of keep your name in the front of people's minds. Content, again, making sure it's appropriate to the readers, really understanding what the reader needs to be design-led. Also understanding what media the specifiers use, whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, making sure that all the content is in the right places. So just think that areas like that, really.
And to those organisations that are spending an awful lot of money on printing brochures and attending events and so on, what would you advise them in terms of whether they could redistribute some of that spend to channels where they might get more bang for buck?
Yeah, I mean, we're still finding there's a mix of demand for digital and also printed. So our client base are tending to do a mixture of both. I always think you should never discount the power of networking. So making sure you attend the right events, also looking at direct marketing, make sure it's targeted correctly. Events like the NBS seminars are great to go to. You meet really good people there. And then also going back to the importance of CPDs.
Yeah.
And I just add on the point about hard copy material. It won't go away as far as I can see it. And one of the things we ask within the Construction Media Index is preferences for hard versus digital, not within the context of manufacturer literature, but actually with regard to magazines. And there's still a significant proportion of people who want to carry on with hard copy. I'd say the majority are happy or do use both, but there's a certain bit that just won't go away, you know, that people still insist on having hard copies, which is unfortunate for manufacturers. Yeah. And actually, you're also saying about face-to-face, the same sort of thing. There's the efficiency of digital engagement, if I use that term, but particularly if it's a new person that's taking on a role, say a new salesperson, they haven't got any established relationship with the people they're calling on. So they need that face-to-face where they can get an extra dimension in terms of the engagement process. If you know the person, then a video call is quite acceptable. But it's that early stage where somebody's new to an organization and they're trying to build relationships where they need opportunities for face-to-face engagement, I'd suggest.
Great, brilliant. Well, we covered loads there. Anything to add on that finally, Andy, just before we round things off?
No, for once, I'm not going to add anything here. Chris and Catherine have done a wonderful job.
No worries, no worries. Well, I think we're just about on the coming up to an hour mark anyway, and that covers all of the all of the areas that we had down to talk about. Guys, it's been incredibly useful. I've found that really insightful. We covered an awful lot of different topics, and as I said earlier, actually we could probably run individual discussions on many of those as it is anyway. But I hope the audience has found it useful anyway. If you enjoyed the webinar, please do download the report that I mentioned earlier. Also check out the information shared by Chris, Catherine, and Andy. We'll be sure to include some of that in the emails that we'll send you after the webinar. Please do check out NBS Source and NBS and RIBA CPD. We can help you get much closer into the actual specification process to be there at the moment when products get specified, as well as raising your profile. Just wanted to say a huge thank you to the panel. So Chris, Andy, Catherine, thank you so much for giving up your time and expertise and knowledge. It's been great having you all on, as always. And we look forward to welcoming you to another NBS webinar again sometime soon. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks to the panel, and we'll see you next time. All right, cheers then. Bye-bye.